ahead to open the conference. My name is Stefan Popov. I'm Executive Director at RiskMonitor, the host organization of this roundtable. And I wish to say a couple of words about this conference and the general major goals we set for ourselves. This is our fifth sort of annual conference since 2007, when we held the first such conference. We've had four, and this is the fifth. The only thing I would add to this is I'm very grateful to our friends and colleagues from the neighboring countries and the Balkan region for the fact that they came to our conference. Thank you very much. Thank you that you made it. We are very glad to have you here and hope you have a nice time in Sofia and some fun today and tomorrow. Well, I need to say a couple of words of our funding and donors. We are very grateful, and I emphasize this, to the Balkan Trust for Democracy, and especially to Pavlina Filipova, who is now here for the first time. I'm very happy to have her here. For the continuous funding for these policy projects that have been related to Balkan dimensions of the organization of crime, non-conventional crime, crime processes, and regional institutional responses to organized crime. So great many thanks to the Balkan Trust. This is the third time we have a critical, small but critical funding from them. I have to include here to mention the Trust for Civil Society and of course our founder, the Open Society Institute, New York and Sofia. And so, dear friends and colleagues, I wish you all the best, a fruitful two-day conference, and have fun. Thank you.
So the focus of the study is to explore the institutional response to organized crime in those countries. Its answers to questions such as what are the main institutions responsible for the fight against organized crime? How do they function in practice? What are the main difficulties in implementing their powers? What are, in general, are the policies, the anti-organized crime policies, effective or not? The institutional research is usually focused on the notion of Balkan organized crime. It has become a kind of common denominator aggregating various illegal activities carried out on the territory of the Balkan states, and instead of developing a typology of organized crime typical for each country, it seems like they use most the notion of Balkan organized crime.
With all of this, Serbia has achieved some results. We have managed to reduce the ability of the criminal networks so far to influence the economy and the society in general. But I would like to address an underlying issue in some more detail, and that is what has not been achieved. It's easy to brag about what has been achieved, but I think the point of our discussion here is to discuss what has not been achieved and what the real causes and the contextual and social and causal sources of organized crime are in our societies, and I suspect that they are very similar, so I will talk about the situation in Serbia. Our view, the view of most people who are involved in the discussion, academic discussion and policy discussion of organized crime in Serbia, is that organized crime can be most productively viewed as a criminal industry. And viewing it as a criminal industry means that you have to embed it, if you look at it causally, if you try to explain it, you have to embed your explanation in the explanation of corruption. organized crime thrives on corruption. Where there's corruption in the state structures and in the society in general, not just in the state structures, you will have organized crime. In societies with a high degree of transparency, it is very difficult for them to have organized crime. This is perhaps the reason why some of the societies in Europe which have the most lenient penal systems, the least intrusive prosecutorial and police systems, tend to have the least organized crime. This is not related to the penal system and the prosecutions. This is related to the level of transparency in the societies, to the absence of corruption. The least corrupt societies, such as the Scandinavian societies, have the most lenient control systems, yet they have the least organized crime. And I think the underlying problem of organized crime in Serbia, like in the rest of the region, really is the problem of corruption. As a Hungarian legal theorist Andras Šajo once wrote, transparency does not seem to be an indigenous concept in Southeastern Europe and in Eastern Europe as a whole. As he says, transparency seems to have been a novel, a foreign concept, a foreign standard that has been parachuted into the region, as he says, with the onset of political transitions. So we still have trouble understanding and accepting the idea of transparency and internalizing the ethical and social sides of it in our everyday life, in our everyday relationships, in the workplace and in the organization of the society. Serbia has tried to address these two parallel issues parallelly. Starting in the early 2000s, in 2001, after the democratic changes, after the fall of the Milosevic government, discussions already started about the introduction of specialized anti-corruption legislation. And at that time, I was personally involved in the drafting of that legislation. There was a sustained effort by several lawyers, philosophers, and sociologists in Serbia who had been working on a draft of a complex anti-corruption law which would include both procedural, penal, and material provisions, which would be a very complex law that needed to be fitted very carefully and very delicately within the legal system.
So we have deepening in institutionalization. And also I think there is the acknowledgement that if regional cooperation in the Balkans is to work, it has to be an open process. In other words, Balkan-centered initiatives don't have much chance to succeed because actually organized crime is not just a regional phenomenon, but it's a global phenomenon. Those networks that we have across borders in this part of Europe actually reach further. So having initiatives that involve actors beyond the Balkans and beyond Europe is the way forward. And finally, one other achievement that we can look at is the fact that regional cooperation is much more accepted these days than in the past. In the past, in this country, but also elsewhere, there was a knee-jerk reaction against regional cooperation because it was seen as an alternative to integration into NATO and the European Union. Now, I think we can say that we have left this preoccupation in the past. So it's a very mixed balance sheet. Regional cooperation has taken off the ground across various policy areas, but especially in organized crime, at the multilateral but also bilateral level. The EU is involved, others are involved, but also there is commitment regionally. My question to all of you is to what extent it has produced results, and I'm joining Vesela here. We have the setup, we have the infrastructure, but how functional it is, and have we gotten some direct benefits? In some cases you might say yes, the Pukanic case in Croatia was a good example where you have some regional implications and some joint action by governments. But to what extent this is the exception or rather than the rule, I'm a bit agnostic, and just to throw it open to you, I think there's much more to do in terms of steering cooperation and pushing it forward.
Дали сме от мисълта да мислим, че правителствата както на Балканите, така и на Запад в обозримо бъдеще ще допуснат пряк граждански достъп и контрол до службите за сигурност и до органите на Министерството на вътрешните си работи, но парламентаристите биха могли да получат подобен достъп и парламентът е всъщност институцията, която може да гарантира на гражданите, че правителството си върши работата отговорно и съвестно. Парламентът като институция, която представлява възможно най-широк кръг от граждански интереси в рамките на един демократичен режим. Сухата статистика сочи, че парламентът изостава по отношение на законодателната инициатива. Основно в този сектор Министерския съвет доминира законодателната инициатива. Мнозинството от законопроектите, които се внасят, водят началото си от Министерството на вътрешните работи и през Министерския съвет попадат в парламента. Но напоследък и в рамките на последния парламент, 41-то Народно събрание, наблюдаваме една тенденция за отваряне към опозицията и това е съставянето на няколко комисии, специално в този ресор, на паритетен принцип. Такава е Комисията за контрол на ДАНС, такава е подкомисията за контрол върху използването на специалните разузнавателни средства. Независимо от причините дали са били моментни политически съображения към момента на конструирането на сегашното парламентарно мнозинство или пък искрено желание за отваряне на парламентарния процес към участие на опозицията, според мен този механизъм дава позитивни резултати поне до сега. Защото антимажоритарният принцип на съставяне на тези комисии успя да направи много по-публични въпросите, свързани с контрола върху използването на специални разузнавателни средства, контрола върху Държавна агенция национална сигурност и процеса по противодействие на организираната престъпност като цяло.
Колегата Петров ви каза за позитивността, и наистина е позитивно това създаване на Комисията за контрол на Държавната агенция за национална сигурност. Тук бих казал, че това е модел на Унгария, който беше заимстван от българския парламент също. Но нещо, което не бих си обаче съгласил с него и мисля, че и той ще съгласи с това, което чуе в момента, че тази комисия си върши работа, но зависи от кой се управлява. Иначе самия контрол в Република България е доста изтерзан и доста с началото на промените след 90-та година си има и история и е създаден с доста голяма трудност. Първата комисия по национална сигурност, която е създадена в България, това е от 7-то Велико народно събрание и то към самия му край. След това за пръв път в 36-то Обикновено народно събрание се създава една така постоянна комисия, която фактически може да се каже, че в 36-то Народно събрание е комисията, с която си прохожда за извършване на този контрол към специалните служби и към МВР. Независимо, че тогава комисията беше по национална сигурност, не беше разделена на вътрешна сигурност и обществен ред, както за отбрана и сигурност.